One of the most compelling and jaw-dropping parts of meditations comes at really the beginning, the opening of book 2. But book 1 is Debts and Lessons. I'll talk more about that later. He says, "Today the people you meet will be jealous and stupid and annoying and frustrated." He lists all the things that people are going to be like today. And part of this is just the Stoic idea of being prepared, right? The unexpected blow lands heaviest. If you think people are going to be amazing and kind and get out of your way and you only hit green lights, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Because the point is not to think about how shitty and awful people are. Not at all. You have to realize why they are like this. He says, because they don't know good from bad. They don't have the same training as you. They are being like you. You cannot allow them to implicate you in others. Because we're meant to work together. We are brothers and sisters. And so what meditation begins with this note. You stick with it, and I think that's such an important lesson that you get from reading it over and over again. Stick with it and realize that this honesty, this kindness, this matter-of-factness is a huge caring heart. A heart that will not allow the heart for being with other people. In one passage in Meditations, Marcus Aurelius writes down epithets for the self. He talks about being honest. He talks about being upright. The words, he says, that he can live by. A couple of things to do that. That's part of one of the Daily Stoic challenges a few years ago. I wrote down 7 of them. I wrote honest, calm, fair, father, brave, just, and still. These are words that I try to live by. I will make decisions, take actions that will demonstrate that idea, which will show the watchwords, epithets that I live by, that I could be described by. And so I think of all the exercises in meditation, that's one that we can all practice. Come up with the epithets for the self, the rules, the descriptors, and the characters that you want to live and model day in and day out. But really, the true opening of meditations is the debts and lessons section. Almost a full 10% of the book is Marcus Aurelius writing what he learned from and what he was grateful for, and the people who trained him, the people who raised him. But the fact that 10% of the book is gratitude, to me, is so important. It's a statement of priorities and the role that gratitude must play in our life. Nothing is so inspiring as remembering the values and virtues, seeing them embodied in the people around you. He never knew meditations would be published. This wasn't for the other people to see that he was grateful to them. It was actually the act of expressing the gratitude that was a gift to him, and we have to have an active gratitude practice in our own lives. One of my favorite stories about Marcus Aurelius, not in Meditations, but at the depth of the Antonine Plague, he sells off the palace furnishings to pay down Rome's debt, which actually does connect to something in Meditations. He talks about how lucky he feels that he's never had to ask anyone else for financial help, and whenever anyone else came to him asking for financial help, he was always willing to say yes. He was a generous, a kind person, yet wealthy and powerful. He tried to use those things for good. He tried to absorb the blows and the pain and the difficulty. This is a print I have from one of my favorite passages from Marcus Aurelius. I have it on the wall. Sell in the Daily Stoic services. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. And I think arguably Marcus Aurelius' greatest contributions to philosophy are not what he wrote in this book, right? What Marcus's greatest contributions to philosophy is how he lived. That even if he had never written a philosophical work, that he'd still be seen as a kind of philosopher king, because he embodied the ideas. He lived them. He demonstrated that a king, an emperor, a person of power or influence or wealth could be good and decent, could do the right thing, could be everything that people expected of him. And that's just, to me, the most important thing we can take from Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius says that no matter what's happening in the world, no matter what other people are doing to us, we always have this superpower. We always have the power to have no opinion. We don't have to decide that it's good or bad. We don't have to decide that it's urgent or not. We don't have to decide anything about it all. We don't have to think anything about it at all. You can just let it go. You can let it pass by. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to have a hot take on it. Let the weather be the weather. This situation be that situation. It doesn't have to be good or bad. We don't have to have an opinion about everything. One of my first reads of meditation, I noticed that Marcus said, when you ruin your life, it ruins your character. The idea that success wasn't whether you made money, whether you got what you wanted, you protected your character. Right? Jesus says, what good is gaining the whole world if you lose your soul? We can imagine Marcus struggling with this as the emperor of Rome. It doesn't matter how many buildings he builds or what land he offers. To him, it matters if he is good person or not. I remember shortly after I read Meditations for the first time, I on this long cross-country flight, and I was next to someone who was jostling the armrest, the person in front of me was flying back. And it was just one of those unpleasant experiences in modern travel. And I thought back to one of my favorite passages in Meditations where Marcus talks about being next to a smelly person. He says, yeah, it's awful. You can say something to them if you want, but if you're not going to say something, then you just have to bear it. No amount of gritting your teeth or silently resenting them is going to change this. Stewing doesn't help them or you. Being miserable doesn't help them, or you're just going to carry this nastiness with you when you go. So I think Marcus would have dealt with the same kinds of inconveniences and annoyances as all of us, even if his life was more sheltered than most of ours. But he reminded himself that this is what life entails. You either say something about it, or you got to get comfortable putting up with it. One of Marcus Aurelius' most brilliant rhetorical questions is, he says, is a world without shameless people possible? The answer is, of course, no. And he says, okay, so you've met one of them, right? This person that you meet, they're one of those people. You know that it's impossible for the world to exist without them. You know inevitably, statistically, you will run into one of them. That's it. He says, reminding yourself that this person is one of a certain number helps you not get so upset about it, not be so surprised by it, and most of all, not despair by it. Most people are the opposite of that person. And I think for the word shameless, we can plug in all sorts of things. People who lie, people who steal, people who cheat, people who do all the things that we don't like. A certain percentage of them are always going to exist and always have existed. And better yet, when we remind ourselves still that they are the minority, we can find a way to categorize them, accept them, and then move on. A couple of years ago, I wrote this book, Conspiracy. Peter Thiel was outed as gay by this sort of Silicon Valley gossip rag. They treated him very cruelly, and he spent millions of dollars and years of his life plotting and scheming to destroy it, which he successfully did. And there's a lot that was really interesting in it, a lot that was really innovative in doing that. I think even some things to be impressed by it, as I was talking about in the book. Every day as I was writing it, I couldn't help but think of one of my favorite lines from Meditations. Marcus really says, the best revenge is to not be like your enemy. The point is that getting evil often makes you like or worse than the person who supposedly did this grievous, heinous thing to you. We see this in Marcus Aurelius' life. He's betrayed by one of his most trusted generals, and he tries not to be angry about it. He has to deal with it, yes, but he tries to actually use it as an opportunity to show the Roman people how one deals with being betrayed, how one deals with civil strife. You can't let the person who wronged you turn you into something just like that. Gregory Hayes, in his translation of Meditations, he makes a great point, and I missed it at the first couple times. He says that nowhere does Marcus identify as a Stoic. And he says, actually, if you ask Marcus, he probably wouldn't have identified with any school at all, even though meditation is, of course, filled with all sorts of Stoic observations and opinions. He says that Marcus would have identified as a philosopher. Paul Graham, in one of his famous essays, says, keep your identity small. Don't identify as a singular thing or with a singular ideology. You want to be a free agent. This is why Seneca quotes so much from Epicurus. He read widely, he understood widely. The point is not to be a Stoic philosopher. The point is to be a philosopher, a lover of wisdom. There's a beautiful line in Joseph Brodsky's essay about the equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius in Rome. It dates back to Marcus's time, but the base of which was redesigned by Michelangelo. Brodsky says something like, if Marcus Aurelius is antiquity, it is we who are the ruins. I don't know what that means exactly. There's something beautiful and haunting about it. Maybe it's this idea that when you read Meditations, you can't help but be struck by classical beauty and perfection, in some ways the highest expression of human greatness. And then you look at us, you look at the way we talk to each other, you look at the things we say, you look at how we live and act and think, and you go, yeah, we're the old, worn out, beaten down, falling apart things. The ancient world feels fresh and modern and new and perfect in so many ways. And I just love that idea. Marcus Aurelius is antiquity, it is we who are the ruins. Especially in meditation that I would build my own first book of Stoic philosophy around. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way to go. Such can be impeded, he says, but nothing can impede your intentions or your dispositions. He says the mind can convert to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. That's the power of Stoicism. We always have the opportunity to practice a virtue. We don't choose where we are, we don't choose what's happening, but if you accept what you are and work with what you're given, as in Meditations, alternative will present itself. Another piece of what you're trying to accomplish. Acceptance can seem like this weakness, that it's stopping you from moving. In fact, acceptance means this door is closed, now I can go try this other door. You first have to accept that the obstacle exists, that it is real, that it has constraints or impediments or difficulties, to then decide what you're going to do about it. You're going to go around, you're going to go over, you're going to use the weight of it against itself. It's an opportunity to do this other thing you couldn't have done under ordinary circumstances. That acceptance is not passive resignation, it's the first step in taking an active approach. And Marcus returns to this theme over and over and over again in meditations. In one passage, he says, a strong stomach digests what it eats. A fire turns what you throw on top of it into flame and brightness and heat. His point is we can use our obstacles as fuel. The things that happen to us in life are opportunities. This is the essence of Stoicism. This is our chance, whatever it is. It might not be the virtue we wanted to practice. It might not be the virtue we're most comfortable practicing, but it's nevertheless an opportunity to be great. I remember I was once talking to the great Robert Greene, and I asked him what one of his favorite passages from Marcus Aurelius' Meditations was. He said it was the one where Marcus Aurelius is talking about, he's looking at this big feast, and he says, oh, that's a dead bird. I said, oh, that's a dead pig. Oh, this wine is rotted grapes. I said, Robert, why did you like that? And he said, that's what I try to do in my writing. I try to deconstruct things, to take away the preconceived notions. It's actually what Marcus says. He says it's about stripping things of the legend that encrusts them, about seeing them as they actually are. I think that's not only what a philosopher has to do, but I think that's what a great writer like Robert Greene does. I call this contemptuous expressions. Because these things kind of loom over us. We go, oh, Harvard is so important. Look at the fancy people that go there. Look how hard it is. Look how expensive it is. But also you could look at the idiots who've graduated from Harvard. The monsters that have come out of there, right? You could be like, oh, the president's the most prestigious, important job in the world. But look at some of the people who have been president. Look how incompetent they were. You're supposed to see things for what they are. Strip them of the legend that encrusts them. See them as they are. The same goes for like some fancy car or, some important position. It's not what people think it is. You have to strip it bare. You have to see it for what it is. And Marcus Aurelius was doing this even with his own purple cloak, the thing that signified he was the emperor. He said, this is just a regular cloak dyed with shellfish blood. You've seen it as it actually was, which is such a critical practice. The famous dictum from Lord Acton is that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. What's remarkable about Marcus Aurelius is that he's perhaps the only exception to this rule that we know. He's given absolute power. What is the first thing he does with it? He gives half of it away to his stepbrother. He isn't corrupted by it. It's a remarkable testament to the power of this philosophy, the idea of what Stoicism can make a person. And that's not an accident. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius warns himself against being Caesarified, of being dyed